You know, I really hate the V5. I hate the Stooge Raceboards V5. And the reason I hate this board is because it has spoiled me for any other board. This board is the worst board to buy because once you step on this board, once you experience the culmination of years and years of focus that's been put into building this board, it makes it really hard to ride anything else. This review is not sponsored by Stooge. I paid full price for this board, and I'm trying to really pull all of my thoughts of this board into this video, but it's going to be difficult. There's a lot of nuances to the board, there's a lot of little things, and I'm trying to not make this video into a tutorial of like how to adjust everything or exactly how every component works, but really to explain the feeling you get on the board, the experience of owning the board, and just kind of some of the features of it, of course. It's important for me to backtrack just a little bit before I got the Stooge Raceboard V5. You know, I've always been after that ultimate combination of extreme carve, extreme stability. Like having both of those, the ends of the spectrum, into one experience is really what I think a lot of us chase. That really summarizes this experience. It's beyond anything else I've ridden. And once you really experience it, you get it. It's just magic under your feet. It's not a perfect board for every scenario or anything like that, but it is the best electric skateboard experience that I've ever had. The approach taken to build the V5 compared to any other e-skate that I've seen or ridden is completely different. Every single component, from the deck to the wheels to the motors to the ESCs to the batteries to the whole thing is just a complete departure from pretty much any other manufacturer out there. It's a hyper-focused track slayer. So let's start out with the deck. The deck is all metal. There's no concave at all. It's completely flat, and it in the back has this kick up kind of like kicktail, I'll call it, not in the traditional sense of like something you would stand on to like lift a board or anything, but it's like a backstop, like a foot stop, I guess would be a better name for it. And that area, how it comes up, provides you this like kind of perfect little spot for your foot to rest against. And that helps you handle the amount of power that this board has. And trust me when I say this board has an extreme amount of power. That footstop then comes up and it flattens out, giving you a flat spot for when you flip the board over to actually sit on the ground. The board comes vinyl wrapped with graphics on top of it, and it comes numbered. And the number, a lot of people ask me, did you choose the number? Why number 24? All these things. I did not choose the number. The number is the kind of the VIN number, or this is the 24th V5 that has been built by Stooge Raceboards. So that is the number. I've decided to keep that number even though I've changed the complete look of my board. I've painted my board, and I used automotive grade paint to paint the whole thing, and that's why mine has this totally different aesthetic than when it first comes. But I will show you what it looks like when it comes from the factory, what those graphics look like, and it is a vinyl wrap from Stooge. Now on this deck, you're gonna obviously use some grip tape in some areas, or the whole thing, however you decide to grip the board. And a majority of riders decide to use a binding on the front. Not everybody, shout out to Rux, just crushing it out there without a binding. With a binding, you position it yourself, you drill the holes yourself, and you mount the binding yourself. The V5 does have some characteristics of it that require a little bit of a level of like DIY to like mount a binding, for instance. And you know, should it come already mounted? I don't think so, because I think that position is so personal to the rider, or if they're even going to run a binding at all, that it makes sense that it doesn't come pre-drilled. I like to run my foot a little bit more open, kind of my toe facing a little bit more forward than a lot of riders. So I'm happy that I got to choose where the binding is positioned. It did take me 4 attempts over time to find the perfect spot. So I have a bunch of extra holes that are now all covered up with the grip tape anyway, so it's not a huge deal, but it is something to note that you might not get it on your first shot, and that's okay. You just drill some new holes or move the binding a little bit based on the little slots that you have inside of the MBS binding mounting system. The deck sits on top of a chromoly frame that is all metal tubing. This is all welded together and is extremely durable, strong, and has no twist in the chassis. The chassis is super stiff. There is zero flex in this board, like zero, beyond zero. It is stable as can be. You feel every single kind of imperfection in a track. It does not absorb anything. So you're trading comfort for, I guess, consistency and precision of how the board is going to handle forces that all the force that you're applying to it. You can get the frame powder coated pretty much any color you want, it sounds like, when you're ordering the board, because you do communicate with Mo at Stooge to decide on some things when you're getting your own board, and one of those is the color of the frame. I decided to go with red. I think it looks really great on this board, and I kind of had an envision of doing like a red and black theme with it. It's always been like a favorite color combination of mine, and so I went that direction with the frame. But you can, if you want it to be white or black or yellow or whatever, you can communicate that, and he will have the frame actually powder coated that color. The bottom of the chassis has a belly pan that is also metal, and this is removable through 5 quick release like kind of screws that you use a large flathead to twist to remove. And these are like automotive or aircraft, I think, quick releases that like they go in and they attach to a little wire that's in there. And then when you pull it, it actually like cinches and sucks up that enclosure right to the base. So that's kind of the chassis, that's the deck, that's how it kind of comes a little bit on like the aesthetic of it. And then you can obviously tell that I've changed mine up quite a bit. I like to customize everything that I own. So then let's talk about the trucks. They're the heart of the Stooge Raceboard experience. These trucks are called 3-links, and they are incredible. Mo has a 20-something year history in automotive racing, and so he took all of that knowledge and sunk it all into the trucks and into this design for an e-skate. I get a lot of questions from people when they see the board and they say, oh, what does that suspension do? They think that the links, these bars, these rods are suspension, and they are not. What the links do is they control the movement of the truck. In a normal truck, you have the hanger that can move kind of almost in any direction because it's just based upon like a kingpin and a bushing. So you have a lot of movement that can happen. And that can induce things like speed wobble. With the link setup, it's literally limiting the range of motion and the direction of motion that the hanger can move in. And because of that, you're able to have a very precise feeling under your feet when you're maneuvering the board. Now, I'm not good at geometry. I'm not like probably going to explain this stuff perfectly well, so I apologize, but I'm going to do my best in that the bushing and the axle are like in line with one another. So thinking of a regular truck, you're squishing a bushing as you turn, you're creating more resistance the more you turn. So that means that in the middle of your turn, when you're pushing the hardest, the board is pushing back against you the hardest. Your rebound is at the strongest point where it's resisting you. So you want to go in deeper, but it's going to fight you more and more and more. And so you're literally fighting it. Now, it is a really fun feeling of like that play of kind of squishing a bushing as you're going. But when you're looking for precision and stability, but also maneuverability, that's not what you want. On this, it feels almost similar to like snowboarding, where you set your angle and you can just hold it there. So in the middle of a turn, if I need a little bit more, I just go in a little bit more into the turn because I'm not fighting it. I'm not fighting the rebound to make the turn happen. It just does what you want. These trucks they're scary awesome because they will do whatever you want. If you're going super fast and you want to turn, they will turn if you tell them to turn. Now, that doesn't mean that it's like, darting everywhere or anything. It just means that you have ultimate control. With that, I will say that this board requires more ankle kind of strength, I guess, and more work by your feet and by your ankles than it does even for your body. There's a lot of control happening down at your feet that you don't necessarily do as much of when you're on a regular board where you're having to use a lot of your body weight to kind of move it. You don't need to use nearly as much. It doesn't take very much effort. I've had a lot of people that ride 3-links tell me, and I agree, it feels like you're almost dancing. It's like it's this smooth ability to move the board in a way that just feels incredible because it's not fighting you. It does what you want. It's otherworldly. Now you can buy 3-link trucks and you can build your own board using them. And I did that. I built Venom, which you can see on my channel, that it's an amazing board. And I thought, oh, I'm going to build one. It's going to be a little bit cheaper. I'll get like kind of the best of the road and track kind of experience. And it's really good. But still, not long after Venom, I raced it at eSkateCon in pro class, got all the way to finals on Venom. And I still was like, you know what? It's great, but I need that extra little bit of magic that is the V5. And I'll let you in on the secret of why the V5 is really head and shoulders above everybody else, is that the deck height is in line with the axle. My feet are literally lower than the tops of my tires. And that pivot point is lower than the tops of my tires. You feel like you're in the board, because the trucks mount directly into the frame, into the chassis. It mounts straight in. And I've never felt so in a board instead of on a board on anything else. Even on Venom, the board I built, which has a decent axle to deck height like kind of ratio, but it's not like a V5. Now I'm sure there's better ways to explain this using like geometry and angles and like, you know, levers and like, I don't know, all this stuff, but it really comes down to feeling that you're in it instead of on it. And it is a amazing feeling. And that is the part that is going to spoil you compared to any other board. Everything else you're going to get on after owning a V5, it feels just, it feels so wrong in a way. I still love a lot of boards and I still enjoy riding other boards, but it's always in the back of my head of like, this could be better. Why am I so on top of it? You feel disconnected once you understand the feeling of true connection of being in it. So a race board though would not be complete without a lot of power. It's just, you want a lot of power. It's a race board, right? This thing delivers so much power, it's terrifying, I'll be honest. When I first got it, I almost had regrets. The first time I stepped on it and rode it, I was like, I don't know if I can handle this. This is instant, insane power. It's like the first time you get on a sport bike, if you've ever ridden a sport bike, and it's like, oh man. Now after time, you're going to get used to it. You're going to understand how the throttle engages and when to use the power, when not to use the power. And there's a lot to it of just practice with the board, but it will take you time to become accustomed to it. So I've had my V5 for just over a year, and not long after I bought my V5, a lot changed in the powertrain and the options that were available for motors and ESCs. So I'm running the older Mamba XLX2 ESCs and the Castle 800 kV motors. Now, you're probably thinking, if you've been in eSkate for a while, what are you talking about? This stuff doesn't, you're not running a Vesk, you're not running like a Hobby Wing or Ling Yi, Chinese ESC, 800K, like what are you talking about? So Mo utilizes RC car tech, and it's so you're basically standing on top of an RC car. And my two ESCs and my 800 kV motors are powered by Lipos. So Lipo Batteries, completely different approach too than most. Now there are some boards out there that use Lipos, and some DIY guys obviously are using Lipos, and they're cheap power. I'm running an 8S 3P. Each of my batteries are 4S, so I have 6 batteries inside the belly pan of the V5. And that's providing like around 400 amps of power to my motors. And it's a whole different ratio than most boards are doing. So you're like, why is it 8S and at really high KV? It's just a different way to kind of skin a cat. Other boards are running like 12S, 16S, 18S, 20S boards in like the DIY scene. And we're just now, it seems, getting Vesks and power that equals to what Mo has been doing now for years. A couple years ago, there was a big race here in Arizona, and Mario came out, and Redbeard and Rux came out, and they had the V5s, and that was the first time I ever saw them in real life, and I had a ton of questions. I had my Venom board built, and I just built it, no binding yet or anything, and I asked him, like, what's the range like on a V5? And he said, oh, about 45 minutes. And I was like, wait a second, you're going to measure it in time? And I get a lot longer. I usually can do a intro session with my 8S 3P battery setup, and I can do like an hour and a half or so of riding, and I'm right around like storage voltage. So I actually could go even longer than that. I could probably get 15 to 20 miles maybe of range. I usually ride about 10 to 15 miles on an intro day. That's usually on like a track session. That's usually what I get out of it before my legs are kind of done anyways. So it's going to come down to what speeds you're hitting, how fast you're going to use that power, just like any board. But this board does not have tons and tons of like range. That's not what it's about. It's about putting down a ton of power really fast. So my ESCs and my motors are the older set now of what's available. Now everybody, all the new hotness is running Hobbywing, actually, which is so interesting, but it's a Hobbywing setup called the Max 4 setup that produces, my board produces 15, I think, kilowatts of power. The newest ones produce 25, I believe, kilowatts of power if you're running like the biggest motors and the Max 4 setup in a dual configuration, which equates out to like, I think it's almost 40 horsepower, which is, I mean, I had a motorcycle, like a Honda Shadow that produced like 40 something horsepower. It's to have that in a board is bonkers. So my board, like I said, it produces less power than like the newest stuff people are running, and it's still so much power. It's unbelievable. Now I can tone my board based on percentage of power very easily using like a computer. I can connect over USB to each ESC and change it. There also is a Bluetooth like dongle you can buy for the ESCs that you connect in, but the manufacturer says you're not really supposed to leave that dongle connected all the time. So it doesn't really make sense to kind of use it, I guess, for me, for doing like a Bluetooth thing. So that's the way I've actually tuned the board, is by using a laptop and using a USB connection. Now, Mo delivers the board with 60% power. That's how you have it set up. I rode it with 60% for a little while, and I said, wow, that's really fun. Let's try 100%. Put it to 100%, went around the block a few times, toned it right back down. And I think at this point, at Eastgate Con this year, I raced it at like 75%, and I probably should have had it a little higher. I should have been in like the 80s, maybe 90% power at this point, so I had a little bit of like a harder jump on the straights. But 75% power even is just gobs of power. When we have our intro to speed days, we'll do some drag racing, and even at like 70 or 75% power, it just smokes everybody. It just walks away from almost every board. Now, some of the DIY boards and stuff are a little different, but production stuff, I haven't had anyone step up next to me that their board can beat me. It's ridiculous. It is so fast. Now, the board shipped with a GT2B remote, which is like an RC car remote. This is what a GT2B looks like. You've probably seen these with like RC cars, with like literally has like a wheel for steering like an RC car. Now, we don't utilize this channel. This doesn't do anything, but we do use the trigger remote. So when you pull the trigger is like gas, and when you push the trigger up, it's your brake. Mo takes all of this that's inside of here, the electronics, and he puts inside of a mod case that looks like this. So it gets way small. This one's a custom printed one that I printed to put the number in. It doesn't come with the number. It comes with his logo in the side, but I wanted a different one, so I printed a different case. It's just 3D printed. But this gives you a much smaller, kind of remote to use. You can see it's a big difference in size. When I received the board, I had never in my life used a trigger remote, not for an RC car or for a skateboard for that matter. I really contemplated, do I want to use this? At that point, my favorite remote was the Hoyt Puck inside of a different enclosure that was pretty comfortable, but it's a wheel remote. And I was so nervous of going to a trigger, and I talked to Mario and a few other people, and they all were telling me that the trigger is easier to control this much power than a wheel remote. And I was like, okay, fine, I'll try. So I had to readapt everything in my brain to understand to use a trigger remote, to be on a super fast, very powerful board. And I'm really happy that I made that transition. And now all of my boards that I can change the remote on, I've moved them all to trigger. and I just like it a lot more. It's much more comfortable. It's much easier to manage the speed, and it really does make a difference in my opinion. If you love a wheel remote, you can use a wheel remote with this too. You can hook up a Hoyt puck, for instance, to this, and it's not a problem to do that. Now, speaking of lipos, the board does not come with any batteries. It's up to you to decide how you're going to provide the power for the board. You can do the lipo route like I did. You can also get a lithium ion pack made by a lot of different makers. Morgan Brady, for instance, he's won eSkateCon now 3 years in a row, was running a 8S 15P battery that was a P42A cells made by Chai Battery, I believe. So you can do it either way. His board, you simply plug in a charger like it's a normal board. My board, I remove the lipos and I use a big lipo charger case that I built. You can buy off-the-shelf chargers for lipos too if you prefer that. It's really up to you, however you want to power it, but you just got to get about 400 amps to the board. I like lipos because if I want to, I can run a second set of them. I can have like more than one set. So if I go out and do some track time, let's say I need more, I can have a whole other set and just swap them in. I think there's pros and cons to both sides of power, delivery of, or like power, how you're going to supply the power. But so far I've been pretty happy with lipos, but they're probably not for everybody. So if you're the type that doesn't want to do all of like the managing of the power and stuff, because they do require a little bit more like kind of maintenance of understanding what to do with them than a lithium ion pack does, just go out and have somebody like SKP, Skyart Power, Chai Battery. There's the guy Don Juan on Instagram that makes the packs. There's a lot of battery builders that would be more than happy to take your money and build you a pack to whatever specifications you need for your board. So you understand the board, you understand the chassis, the kind of the belly pan, how it all connects in. We've talked about the ESCs a little bit. They are waterproof too, which is pretty cool. So if you do get like a little splash or something, it's fine. So they're exposed to the elements. So then how do you take all that power and deliver it to the wheels? We use a open gear drive. It is the meanest sounding and looking gear drive there is in eSkate. It is a hardened steel gear that is bolted up to a hub, not like what we call hubs usually in eSkate, which is like the rim. I'm gonna call that the rim for now. On this, you have like a hub, and this hub is a big chunk of metal that has studs coming out of it, bearings inside of it. Bolted to that, you have a massive open gear that's made of hardened steel that pairs up to a motor pinion, and it is completely open to the elements. So the sound that it makes is some people don't like it, I'll be honest. I think it sounds super mean and cool. It sounds aggressive, and it's like the V8 of our sport, straight up. Each time I ride, you do want to lube those gears. I use chain wax. I take this can of chain wax, spray it on there a little bit, give it like 30 seconds or whatever. Probably longer would be better to let it like kind of dry on there. And then I go run my track day. If I start hearing the gears being really, really loud and I want to, quiet that down and make it run a little smoother maybe, I'll just give it another little spray. It's not a huge deal. Mo recommends using red and tacky, taking a little dab of it and put it on there. I did that on Venom, and I decided not to do that on the race board because it's super messy. I do think that it probably works a little bit better. It flings it everywhere. So I found chain wax to be a lot cleaner of a solution. It's not nearly as messy. It doesn't get on everything. And so I'd recommend going the chain wax route. Now that, like I said, that gear is connected to a hub, and then that hub mounts to the wheels. And these wheels aren't like anything else. Again, these wheels are from Bishop Racing Products. BRP is what everyone calls them, and it is a small mom and pop shop here in America that makes each wheel by hand to Mo's spec. They're incredibly soft, incredibly grippy, and really, really awesome. They're a 6-inch tire, so they're like 150 millimeters, and they're 3 inches wide, and now he actually has 4-inch wide ones I haven't tried yet. The outside is rubber, and they're almost like go-kart tires is what they look like, and they are so soft. They're 45A in the back, and I think 50A in the front. I might be off by 5 on that, but they are so soft. You can take your thumb and just push in on them. It is so cool. And then inside, instead of air, they're not pneumatic, they're filled with foam. So when you actually wear down these tires, you hit the foam and you don't get a flat. Now, when you do get down to foam, you don't have a ton of grip. It's not like an ice rink instantly or anything, but it's time to change them. The cool thing though is I don't have to worry about blowing a tire when I'm going super fast on a track or in a turn or something. So I love the fact that these aren't pneumatic and they're actually foam filled, and they're super, super soft. They are really cool. When you hit let's say you hit like a really big crack though, they tend to bounce. So you'll hit it and it'll like rise up kind of like a thane, like a urethane wheel. It'll actually hit and it'll like kind of give you that skipping feeling. Not a great feeling, but this is really made, these tires are really made for running on a track setup, not like running in the streets and stuff. You can use them out there, it's not the end of the world, but they do have that same tendency to kind of like skip a little bit. It's not the best feeling when you're going really fast. Most tracks though don't have huge cracks in them. But like if you didn't see it in the road and you hit a big pothole, it might skip a little bit for sure on you. Now, I don't think there's a perfect tire for every surface, but if you're talking like a normal like parking lot, let's say, after a couple laps with these and they heat up, there's an actual temperature range that they should be operated in. And when you hit that range, it's like they're glue. They literally just, you can lean as much as you want and these things, they've got you. Unless you hit sand or something, you've got them. They give you so much confidence to be able to just push into a turn. It's so awesome. And without these tires, I don't think the V5 would be nearly as good because it gives you that ability to feel so confident and just throw it into a turn. And they do slide. And when they slide though, the braking point it's really far down the road. Like you gotta push hard to get them to slide. And then once they do, it's a very progressive slide. I've ridden other tires where once you hit that braking point of traction, they're gone and the board's just gonna like turn on you. This tire lets you kind of gradually get into the slide. And as I've practiced on it more and more, I'm getting to the point now where I can start to slide without like using my puck hand on the ground or anything. And you're starting to feel the control of being in a slide and coming out of a slide without like losing it completely. And these tires make that a lot like easier. It's not easy, but easier to do. The rim of the wheel and the tire, or like the actual tire part of it and everything, is all one. So each time that you get a new one, you just put the whole tire and hub on. There's 4 bolts that come through that are the studs, and then you can just throw on the nut and tighten it down, and now you've got a new set of tires on. So it's really easy in a way to change tires. It's much easier. You don't have to fiddle with your bearings or anything like that. You just push it on, bolt it up, take it off, that kind of thing, and switch out your tires. And then you get some cool like hubcaps actually that are like these milled out hubcaps that slide in and you can bolt up just to give it like this cool aesthetic. So it's got like a different style to it. They remind me a lot of like BBS rims on cars. So we've talked about kind of the thought process behind the V5. We've talked about the deck and the chassis, the power, the batteries, the trucks. We've talked about the wheels, the remote. There's a lot to this. It's just a kind of a completely different approach, and it really is a special board. The price of this board is not cheap. It's like a 41, I think it's 41.40 for a complete without any batteries. So you're looking at just a ballpark kind of good number to look at is right around $5,000 to get into a V5. You might be able to get a little cheaper. You could definitely go more expensive depending on how you do it. If you go with a lithium ion pack versus lipos, it's going to be a lot more. And there's some opportunities there to spend money. You can repaint the board if you want, like I did, and that's going to cost more and things like that. But right around high 4 to right around $5,000 is what it's going to cost. I sold 6 boards to buy this board. It's a lot of money. I'm not downplaying that at all. It is a ton of money to spend on something like this. But the experience that you get out of it is worth every penny. So that's it. That's the Stooge Raceboard V5. If you guys have any questions or comments, feel free to leave them down below and I will do my very best to answer them all. And I will see you guys on the next ride. Yeah.